40% more efficient, over 10,000 assets created for more than 40 markets. Discover the recipes for Heineken success. So, global production for a global brand like Heineken can be really challenging. Can you take us along in, well, a couple of the challenges you were trying to solve by integrating Storyteq's creative automation platform?
Yeah, I think it's always this balance where as a global brand, you want to have cut-through creative, a big key insight to tap into. But then on the other hand, you have the consumer's expectations that in the nowadays world, things are more contextually relevant to them. And since we operate across many regions, different countries, how to balance this global scale and consistency with the expectations to drive that relevance towards the consumer needs. And yeah, by just doing this manually, it would be impossible. So we needed to find a solution how to really make sure we could balance how we want to drive and grow our brand.
So if I summarize this, you were looking for like global control and consistency, but like local speed and agility and relevancy towards the local consumer, connecting them with the Heineken brands in this case.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we want to do. And I think it's more indeed the skill. It's not the control part, I think, but it's more the consistency, because I think that's the only way to really build global brands is that you recognize the brand, the cues wherever you are across the world. But for the rest, indeed, exactly what we were aiming for.
Global consistency, local relevancy. That's what you're aiming for.
Yeah, and then, of course, in the nowadays world, at speed, at scale, and doing it in the efficient way is the ask from within the business. So that was added to what we wanted to solve. You have line extensions, so Heineken 00, Heineken regular. Those are all type of variables that we can now start to play around with. So if we start to develop campaigns, we almost see that in those layers. So if we have a concept, we really think about, okay, how would this concept translate to be relevant in Vietnam? Or the same concept, how can we drive more relevancy in Brazil? And sometimes it's with changing of cost, changing of occasion, changing of location. Seasonality is a big one. We develop campaigns that in some markets will be deployed in Q1, which is in this part of the world winter, where at the same time in other parts of the world that's summer. So really taking all these building blocks almost as opportunities to localize on. So yeah, if you translate that into campaigns, so this year we had a big campaign. It was a 150th celebration, so we had this...
all about gezelligheid.
Exactly, all about gezelligheid. And indeed, we wanted to translate that and make that relevant across the globe. And really utilizing all these layers to make sure that in a market like Laos, at that time of year, the message was relevant, the location was relevant, while we were deploying in the Netherlands with the same campaign narrative, but different versions of that. So that is, I think, really where the power comes to life.
Yeah, I think it actually ties into what you said before, right? Where you said, like, we first utilized Storyteq only for, like, after the master was done and after the campaign was there, and then we started to utilize the platform for localization, where we are now, you pretty much think about all the different layers and options you have in a creative, in an actual asset, and how can we actually leverage that to build our campaign up in such a way that we can make it relevant and we can truly localize for a local market in this case.
Exactly, and I think the localization, a lot of this is based on hypothesis, but I think the most important is to start doing this based on the learnings. So while utilizing the platform, we have started to learn what actually drives impact across the various markets. So now all of a sudden these building blocks really become a connector of the learnings we have and allows us to optimize, because sometimes also data is not fully telling the full story. So it also allows us, localization also means having multiple options to deploy in a market to optimize towards the best performing. So I think that flexibility also to learn and optimize within a campaign activation is an additional layer that we really utilize as well.
So it's actually going from a static asset towards this dynamic layer, and the additional benefit on top of there is that you can, well, if we keep talking in the narrative of layers here, you can tweak individual layers based upon the learnings from local markets.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
It starts consumer first, and I think indeed consumer behavior, consumer needs, they are changing. I think the way as a brand you can connect with consumers is changing. So the advertising model where brands only send messages is evolving. You need to find different ways to really connect and build that top of mind awareness and also that more relevancy with them. So we're always looking at ways, how can we do that? One hand, it is optimizing the advertising part by tapping into new platforms, new trends that are emerging. And I think that is also one of the things, you know, we always continue to look into, like how can we with creative automation continue to follow those trends? It can go from new placements to literally the way that in-asset copy is treated, or that's really something we want to make sure that we are fit for future fit.
Yeah.
And as we call it, fit for platform. So that is, I think, one big area we're looking into.
Yeah, that's like the external perspective. How can we leverage new formats and new ways of interacting with audiences on these formats through our creative?
Exactly, and I think that's the digital advertising part. I hope one day that also if you look at more of the engaging experiences, so that could be AR experiences or other elements to really go from sharing a message to interaction. Yeah. I hope that these type of elements in the future can also be part of the creative automation suite that we can actually drive that relevance across the globe.
Let's have a look internally in this case, right? So what do you see happening in terms of how to leverage, well, take AI in this case, in terms of how you optimize your internal workflow to bring content or bring your creatives to market and to these audiences we just discussed faster?
Yeah, I think as mentioned, we're operating a hub that does the media and content creation and deployment across 38 markets. And that is a whole process that goes end to end. Yeah. So that is from the platform development, but also asset management, a workflow for briefing, review, approval of plans for markets, integrating creative automation into that process, and then linking that back into the media data to have almost this ongoing loop that based on data, based on performance, we can optimize by market.
So like a truly connected ecosystem, end to end in this case.
Exactly, and I think we're getting there. We're getting closer, but always when you think you're there, the next thing is waiting for you.
Suddenly there was AI, right?
Exactly. So that is a bit the case for us as well. So we will always focus on the fundamentals that needs to be in place, and then indeed the additional opportunities, the new trends, like what can we do within these fundamentals to improve that with an AI, for instance.
All right. So what you're saying is we need to make sure that our, let's say, our foundational end-to-end process, our foundational technology we're using, and how our people on a global scale, but also locally, leverage this technology, that needs to be in place. And since that's there now, it's easier for Heineken to actually leverage new, well, external platforms, new types of audiences, and new types of interacting with audiences, but also tools like, right, trends like AI and Gen AI in particularly, to actually have that foundation in place, on top of which you can leverage these trends continuously, giving you a head start, and making sure you can actually keep going forward faster than, well, in the end, anyone else out there in the market.
Exactly, and that is what we will continue to do, because indeed trends, if you just run after trends, I think you can do cool stuff, but that consistent base to drive relevance is crucial. And then from there, I'll give one example. We talked about AI, and we can't leave the room without thinking about like what to do with that. But just a simple example, right? Translations is a big thing working across all these markets. Today, that's still done more manually, human-based. But now we have data from almost 3 years of translating content in these markets. So we can now start to fuel a engine to start optimizing this through AI, and actually in the future be faster, more efficient in the whole translation process. So that's just a practical example of how we see new opportunities can optimize things we do today.
Yeah, I think it's a practical example, but it's also maybe a good conclusion, right? As in the investment you've made over the last year by building this end-to-end connected ecosystem and actually aggregating this data, and having the ability to truly, well, A, learn from it, but B, to leverage this data for, well, the example you just gave, right? AI-generated translations in this case, is, well, the pure proof of yeah, the approach you've taken is successful and actually keeps driving the efficiencies and effectiveness you're looking for to be successful as a brand on both a global and a local level.
Yeah, and I think like throughout this discussion, like super good summaries, and I think that also is because we, like you don't, in my experience, technology is an enabler, right?
Yeah.
You have people, you have things you want to deliver. And you can't do that with just the people at Heineken. You do that with your agency partners, but also with partners like Storyteq, and literally become business partners. So, you know, for you in this conversation, also being able to simply recap what we're looking for, how we're working together, shows how we have a close partnership and think forward as well together. So my hope is that we can start doing a lot of the cool plans we came up with together in 24.